June budget recap. Let's do this.
Let's do this, Moo.
Today we're going to be doing a full June budget recap, and we're going to be looking at where all my dollars went for the month of June, as well as using the Where Did My Money Go worksheets to figure out how I'm going to analyze the information that I pulled from June, as well as figuring out if my spending is aligning with my financial goals. So why do you actually close out your budget? What does that really mean? So a lot of people, they move straight on to the next month. They're excited to create their budget for the new month, and they fail to go back and look at all of the hard work they've done the previous month, tracking your spending, using estimates, creating your budget, writing down numbers, figuring out your debt plan, your savings goals, priorities. All of that should be looked at before moving on to a new month. So that's what we're going to do today. Welcome to the Budget Mom YouTube channel. I'm Kamiko Love from thebudgetmom.com and theliverich.planner.com, and today we're going to be doing a full June budget recap. So I like to call it not blindly following your budget. So you put on all this work throughout the month, tracking your spending, writing down your budget. You definitely don't want to move on to the next month without analyzing all of that important information. So it's figuring out if the spending that you did throughout the month is aligning with your goals. Is the spending in a really hard category, a category that you find yourself overspending time and time again? Is it increasing? Is it decreasing? What are the trends that you're noticing and seeing with your spending? Closing out your budget has to do with tracking your expenses, which is the number one step in my budget by paycheck method. It is by far the most critical step that you will complete when creating a successful budget. Without it, you can't create a budget at all. So I get a lot of questions like, how do I figure out my budget categories? How do I figure out the limits for those categories? How do I know how much cash to pull out for my envelopes? How much should I be throwing towards debt, towards saving? Can I do both? All of that is going to be answered by tracking your spending and creating that budget. So after a month is over, one of the first things that I do throughout the month is when a bill clears my checking account, I write down the actual amount that cleared. So for instance, my car wash, I budgeted $21 or $22, but $21.75 is what actually cleared my checking account. Here's another one, a Vista, which is my utilities. Now, utilities fluctuate up and down every single month. How do you budget for those types of expenses? You budget on the worst case scenario or the highest amount you think that bill is going to be. It's better to over budget than it is to under budget. That way you can make sure that your income can cover that expense at the worst possible scenario. So I budgeted $140 for my utilities. It was really $84.96. We call this difference a budget variance. Why is that so important? Because let's say, for instance, I budgeted $140. $140 of my income was going towards that expense. What if it only ended up really being $30? That means you have a whole lot of income just sitting in your checking account without a plan. And with a zero-based budget, you want to make sure that every dollar has a purpose. Now, if you're fine with just leaving the budget variance in your checking account for a checking account cushion, that's totally fine. It's what I do sometimes. But if there is a lot of variance between what you're estimating and what your actual bill cost is when it pulls out of your checking account, you might want to look at the dollars that are left in your checking account and come up with a new plan at that time. So this is what my June budget looks when the month is over. I have all of my actual amounts that pulled out of my checking account. As you can see, I budgeted $2,082 for I budgeted $2,650 for all my bills. It really only ended up being $2,618, so a little bit lower than what I estimated. I also write down how much I spent out of my cash envelope. So I budgeted $400 in cash for food. I spent $399. Gas, I budgeted $150, but I only spent $89 in cash. I am choosing at this time any cash that I can save from my cash envelope goes towards my first savings priority, which is saving for my new house. And then, of course, I'd write down my sinking funds. Now, if there's a huge budget variance, like I said, you might want to address that and either add it to paying off debt or savings, whatever your number one priority is. So that is your June budget, and this is how I fill mine out after the month is over, or during the month, or throughout the month. So let's go to the expense trackers. I close out my budget using 4 different things: my expense trackers and 3 worksheets that I call Where Did My Money Go worksheets. These are the important data, and I created these worksheets so you could extract the most helpful data from your expense trackers. Now, I am a manual expense tracker. I track my expenses manually, and I use the highlighter method. If you're wondering more about how I track my expenses and why it's great for visual learners, I'll put a description in the link of this video. But essentially, as you're tracking your expenses manually, you start to notice different things. Certain categories keep popping up time and time again. Maybe it's food spending, maybe it's gas or car maintenance, maybe it's constant beauty purchases, or you're taking your son or your kiddo out a lot for fun activities. Maybe it's a fun category. Start highlighting like transactions. So for example, you can see on my expense tracker, the dark blue is savings expense. It's me saving money. Pink is all of my utility expenses. It's my AT&T, it's my Hulu, my Spotify, it's my Avista, my utilities. You can see here in the light blue, which you can see on my cash spending, is food purchases. So give each category that you notice going on as you're tracking your expenses a different color. That will make it a lot easier to organize your spending. That's going to tell you what budget categories you're going to need and use in your budget. So it's not about writing down unrealistic, unused budget categories because someone out there is telling you, oh, you should include this category in your budget. It's based on the real spending that is going on in your life. And that also goes with setting and assigning values for your budget categories and your cash envelopes. So I have 2 expense trackers. I have one for my checking account. I also have one for my cash spending. You should have a separate expense tracker for anywhere in your life there is money movement. Do you use a credit card? You should be tracking that spending. Are you using cash? You should be tracking that spending. Are you using a checking account? You should be tracking that spending. Anywhere there is heavy money movement, you need to be tracking those dollars, every dollar. So for me, because I'm an all cash spender and I don't use credit cards, it's just my checking account, which I use to receive income and pay bills, and the rest of spending in my life is cash spending. So when I get done filling out my expense tracker one page, I total up the colors and the categories up at the top. I do that with each page that I fill out. That's going to save you a lot of time when it comes to closing out your budget at the end of the month. Instead of having to go through every single expense, you have those expenses added at the top. These are the Where Did My Money Go worksheets. I do actually track my net worth as well. Your net worth, and if you're wondering about what your net worth is, I have a video on my YouTube just sharing with you a little bit more in detail how to figure out your net worth and what that includes. But essentially, it's your total assets minus your total liabilities. It's what you own versus what you owe. And I jump into a lot more detail in my other video, but I'll put a link to that video in the description of this video. So I do track my net worth. I track that at the end of every month after all payments and saving contributions have been made. Now, I don't use the debt payment plan worksheet because I paid off my debt last year. But if you watch some of my older budget recaps, I have this filled out where you can see as an example. The debt payment plan worksheet and the net worth tracker should be filled out at the end of every month after all payments and contributions have been posted and cleared your account. That way you get an accurate, updated total of those things. The one worksheet I really want to talk about is my monthly budget category breakdown. This is one of the Where Did My Money Go worksheets. Your starting balance plus any incoming income is going to equal your total monthly income. It gets a little bit confusing. A lot of people think that their monthly income is just the paychecks that they receive. When you're closing out your budget, and in the accounting world, your actual monthly income is your starting balance plus any incoming income. What is incoming income? It's paychecks. It's money you might receive as a cash gift. It's money that you're using from your savings account. Are you using a sinking funds envelope like I am this month for 4th of July? That is considered income for the month. Now, it may not be earned income, but it's income. And then, of course, you're going to minus that from your expenses. So my income this month seems really high, but it's really important to remember that this is not all earned income. I had a starting balance. Your starting balance is what you rolled over into the new month from last month's income. So did you have money just sitting in your checking account at the end of May? That would be your starting balance for June. So June 1st, if you looked at your checking account and you had money sitting in there, that is income starting balance for June. Same with your cash envelopes. If you decided to roll over any extra cash or leftover cash from your May cash envelopes to your June cash envelopes, that's going to be included in your cash starting balance. You're walking into a new tracking period with money left over from the last month, so it needs to be counted because you plan on spending it. I also used some vacation savings this month, my paycheck, and then of course the income or the cash that my boyfriend gives me to reimburse me for half of the bills. That equals $7,283 for a total monthly income of $9,321. One of the main things that I really wanted you to remember is the formula you want to use when closing out your budget is starting balance plus income minus expenses. And there is a really great formula that I'll tell you here in a minute to make sure that you are closing out your budget accurately. Now, usually I do sticky notes. If you look in my previous budget recaps, you can go back and look at the sticky notes. This time I'll just tell you that formula. But starting balance plus any incoming income minus expenses should equal 0 if you're using that zero-based budget. So very quickly, if you're seeing anything in pink on the difference, it means that I spent more than what I budgeted for. So for example, car maintenance, what is that? It's my gas. It's getting my oil changed. And for example, this month it was getting a brand new hitch put on my Jeep so I could get a bike rack on my Jeep. Who would ever thought Jeep doesn't come with a hitch? It's Jeep, people! Come on, Jeep! Anyways, so I ended up spending way more on my car and maintenance fund, $190 over my budget. But if you're overspent in one area of your budget, it means you better be under in other parts. There's got to be trade-offs. There's got to be compromise. I'm so hot right now. I'm dying. There's got to be compromise between your budget categories. So for instance, I was under in my beauty or in my home category. Usually I spend budget about $930, which is rent and some other household goodies, but I was $80 under that. So another quick thing, your budget category breakdown should include all the budget categories that you should have got from your expense tracker, but it should also include one other thing, your next month's starting balance. So every dollar of your income needs to have a plan, even if that means that income that you're using is for next month. That's its plan, and it should be included in your budget category breakdown for everything to even out. Now, I was about $69 off. So my total monthly expenses equaled $9,252. My income was $9,321. So it was not a big difference. With my cash spending, I round up and I save all of my change. So I don't track that, which means some of that difference might be due to me saving some of that change, but not a big deal. If you are off and it's by a couple of dollars, under $100, don't get frustrated, don't spend a lot of time on it, just move on to the next month, start fresh. The last thing I want you to do is get so frustrated that you give up. And being under $100 difference off in your numbers, not a big deal. The next one I want to talk about is my monthly debt and savings breakdown. This is important because this is going to tell you whether or not your spending is aligning with your financial goals. So in the month of June, I was able to save $3,426. That's 37% of my income. Out of the money that I saved, 65% of that went towards my house savings. And if you're looking at my savings breakdown, I saved for many things: my house, my car maintenance, my college fund for Jamesy, sinking funds, a vacation savings account. You can save for multiple things, but it's important to prioritize. And by looking at all the things that I saved for and the percentage of my income that I saved, 65 went towards my house, 25% went towards my vacation, 6% went to saving for the future, which is my sinking funds. It's very obvious what my goals are based on my spending. And this is going to tell you if your spending is aligning with those goals. Monthly spending comparison. Have you ever created a goal for yourself? You want to say, next month I want to decrease my food budget by 30%. Do you ever actually go back and track that to make sure you're reaching your goals? Do you ever wonder if month after month you have a budget category that's increasing? This worksheet is comparing this month's spending to last month's spending. If it's in green, I spent less than I did last month. If it's in red, I spent more than I did last month. Now, up here at the top is a monthly income change. This is really important because did your income decrease or increase compared to last month? Because if it increased or decreased, your spending should compensate for those increases or decreases. So, for instance, I had a huge monthly income change. I had a decrease in income by $2,721. That's because for the month of May, I went on 2 all-cash paid vacations. I went to New York and we ended up going to the Tri-Cities for a baseball tournament, which means I used vacations savings, which counted as income for May. I did not have that much savings income this month, so it decreased by a couple $1,000s. As you can see, the biggest area where I compensated for that decrease was in my vacation spending, as well as in my starting balance. I did have a big jump in increase in my savings. I only saved 12% of my income in May. In June, I saved 37% of my income. So this is a great way to compare this month to last month. There is one thing that I did very quickly want to mention. I get a lot of questions about this monthly budget. So if I am a paycheck budgeter, how do I have a monthly budget for things? It's still really important to figure out and give yourself a limit for a monthly budget. Now, when I say monthly budget, I mean like a 30-day time frame. It doesn't have to necessarily be from the first of the month to the end of the month. Your tracking period might be from your first paycheck of the month, which may start on the 15th, all the way to your next paycheck, the first paycheck of the next month, so you're tracking from the 15th to the 15th. It depends on when your tracking period is, but it's really important to also give yourself that monthly budget because that's going to give you a big picture overall look at your limits for your budgeting categories. So this is my full June budget recap. I do really quickly want to mention, when you are closing out your budget, and I told you I'd mention the formula, a little trick. So I write it down usually on a sticky note as a reminder for myself when I do it. So your June closing balance. So June closing balance should equal your should equal your July starting balance. So, for instance, as you can see, I already have July figured out. And if you look at my expense trackers, I have a starting balance already written down. So your closing balance for June should equal your July starting balance. And that's how you're gonna know if you're closing out your budget correctly. So that's my full June budget recap. If you found this video helpful, please like it and don't forget to subscribe.